Well, amen. I forgot to mention something that you can be prayerful about. I don't think there's been any action more in the Senate, but the Equality Act has been put up by the current leadership of our nation, and it's going to be very detrimental to those people of faith. And so let me help you to understand it a little bit more. I have a printout. It should be back there in the back corner. I printed it out for our last Wednesday night crowd, but it's going to affect churches. And it's going to be a real game changer. And so let's pray that this Equality Act will not pass in the Senate. I don't know if the vote has occurred yet, but I know the two senators in Florida will vote no against it. But let's just pray for our nation in that regard, that the other senators will vote no against it. Again, it's very detrimental to the household of faith, churches mostly. All right. We are in the lesson number 6 this evening. If you don't have the outline, there's an outline in the back. This is lesson number 6 of the Big Picture Bible Study of the Old Testament, and we are in era number 3, the Exodus era. I used to, when I was young in the faith, I tried to, I was eating up everything I could consume in regards to Bible knowledge, Bible history, Bible, whatever Bible. I would watch videos. I would read books, but in some of the videos that I read, the videos that I watched, they depicted the Exodus as a small tribe of people, 100 people. And now that I know, after these years, they weren't even close. They were unsaved people making a movie about the Bible. Perhaps they were just low budget, or they just didn't know the actual number of people that came out during the Exodus. The Exodus means going out, exit us, get us out of here kind of an idea. But Exodus means going out. And so the Exodus was no small matter. Your first blank there. It was a mass, or it was the mass movement of Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, back to the promised land in Canaan. It wasn't an easy movement. It was resisted by the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. He didn't want them to go. He would threaten military action or retaliation against them. The miracles that God performed at this time are among the most spectacular recorded in the Bible. And if you remember what they are, can you list them off? Just to think back of all the stories that you've read or heard about. The river Nile being turned into blood. The frogs, the lice, the ultimate one, the death of the firstborn as the 10th one before the release of the children of Israel. But when as God executed these judgments upon the gods of Egypt through these plagues, the people that left, remember they were there for 400 years after Joseph brought all the family in Egypt, when we finished the patriarch era. Remember that lesson 2 weeks ago. But they went in 70 souls. They're going to come out a great number, a nation, right? They were a family, but now they'll come out as a nation. If you read the first couple chapters of the book of Numbers, you'll know God numbered them. How many were there coming out of Egypt? Let me give you that blank there on your third dot there. The book of Numbers tells us that when the Israelites left Egypt, there were 600,000 fighting men. So if there's 600,000 fighting men, then they're the corresponding women in their lives, the families. There's 600,000, there would be 600 fighting women as well. So that's 1.2 million. Each of those families probably had children, 1 or 2 each. So that's another 1.2 million. In addition, there were men and women who were too old to fight. Right? So they weren't fighting men. They were too old. They're elder. They could not fight. And so that's probably another million or so. And then the priestly tribe of the Levites, they weren't fighters. They were dedicated to the Lord, their wives and their children. So conservatively speaking, the exodus of the Israelites, or the Jewish people from Egypt to Israel, probably, in a conservative counting here, there's probably between 2.5 to 3 million people. That was unheard of at the time, right? That's probably the largest mass movement that ever occurred up until that point. So that's big, that's huge. It's not just, a few dozen or so tribes leaving. This was a mass exodus. Not a little tribe of nomads, but 1 million or more people, 2 million, 3 million people on the move. It was a nation that was moving out of Egypt, not just a small tribe. So here, let's just quickly review the eras that we've covered so far. 3 eras in the Old Testament. The first, your blank there, is the creation era. Who's the main figure there? That would be Adam. Where's the location? Where were they created? In the Garden of Eden. So creation, Adam, Eden. Fill in the blanks here for the storyline summary. Adam is created by God, but he sins and destroys God's original plan for man. Okay, so you memorize that system right now. It'll come back to you as we review in the weeks ahead. So everybody there, you with me? You got the blanks? All right. If you don't have them, there will be an answer key in the back at the end of the service this evening. And then the second era of the Old Testament is the patriarch era. The main figure would be Abraham. And what's the main location at the time? It is not Egypt, it is Canaan, the land of Canaan. All right, Patriarch Abraham, Canaan. The storyline summary: Abraham is chosen by God to father a people to represent God to the world. Remember, we read those passages where the promise of Abraham was passed on to Isaac, and Isaac then to Jacob. So the promise, they were the patriarchs, the fathers, and that promise is going to be fulfilled. It's coming down the line generationally. It's progressively moving down the line of the chosen people, all to bless the world, if you remember that promise. All right, so today is the Exodus era. Okay, remember, they went in 70 souls. They're going to Exodus. And the main leader of that Exodus would be Moses. That location would be Egypt. And we'll give you the summary storyline in just a few minutes. All right? Ready? It's on the next page, actually. So if you were just to summarize the Exodus with one sentence, it would be this. Your blank here on page number 2. Through Moses, God delivers the Hebrew people from slavery in Egypt and then gives them the law. Okay, so that's the storyline, summary storyline. You memorize those 3 storylines, you're going to get a good understanding of the flow of Bible history, Old Testament history. All right, remember now then, with every era, there's going to be 4 main events or 4 main subjects of that era. In the Exodus era, these are the 4 main events. We have number 1, Deliverance. Number 2, the Law. 3, Kadesh Barnea. And 4, the 40 years of wandering. All right, so now I think we're all caught up. If you need a blank, let me know. Raise your hand. Do I need to repeat anything? All right, so let me fill in the storyline summary. All right. Okay, so through Moses, God delivers is the blank there. God delivers the Hebrew people from slavery in Egypt and then gives them the law. This was unique. Okay, God hadn't done this before. There's a unique people with a unique purpose. All right, let's now look at, wow, man, I got to move quickly. So let's look at number 1 there. The first main event or major event of the Exodus era is deliverance, and the blank is this: freedom from slavery in Egypt. That's the big idea. If you would, please turn to Exodus chapter 2. Exodus chapter 2. And I'm going to read through this quickly so we can get along, because there's a fun passage I want to get to with the spies. All right, so Exodus chapter 2, and we'll quickly read. Now, I'll just describe verses 1 to 16. If you remember the birth of Moses, the midwives were ordered to kill the male babies. These midwives rebelled against the government. They would not do it, and Moses' life is spared. He's put in a basket. The Egyptian Pharaoh's daughter finds him in the Nile, and adopts him. He becomes a child of Egypt. At the same time, he's being mothered by his own mother, right? So the devil is paying for the education of Moses, all right? So there we have what's going on in there in verses 1 to 16. Moses, as he's growing up, he kills an Egyptian taskmaster because he's abusing his brethren, the slaves. The slaves give an indication that, hey, are you gonna kill me like you did the taskmaster? And so Moses is afraid. He goes, this thing is known. I got to get out of Egypt. So he gets out of Egypt and he goes and finds Zipporah, right? Let's look at Exodus chapter 2, verses 11 to 16 here. And it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown that he went out with his brethren and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren. He looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the land or sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together, and he said unto him that did the wrong, Wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And he said, Who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killedst the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, Surely this thing is known. So now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Jump now to verse 23. He meets Zipporah. They get married. She has a son named Gershom with him. And look at verse 23. So this is like the second 40 years of his life. The first 40 in Egypt, the second 40 in the land surrounding Mount Sinai. He is learning the landscape for 40 years of his life, because the next 40 years he'll take 2.5 million people in that landscape. Okay, so God is preparing him at this time. But look what happens in verse 23. And it came to pass in the process of time that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage, and they cried, and their cry came up unto the God by reason of the bondage. And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God had respect unto them. So here they're calling out to God, and remember the promise to the who? To the patriarchs. So that promise God is fulfilling, making sure it comes to pass. Now he hears his people, they're calling, and what does he do? Let me give you the blanks there in your next outline there. Number 1, or letter A, the Hebrews have languished under slavery in Egypt for 400 years. That's why they increased from 70 to 2.5 million in 400 years. With all their practices, they're doing well. So they cry out. There for 400 years when they cry out to God for deliverance. Letter B there. God raises up Moses as his spokesman to Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, asking for spiritual freedom for the Hebrew people. Okay, and that's chapter 3 of Exodus. Remember the burning bush. Remember who shall I say sent me? Tell him I am sent you. Remember that whole story. And Charlton Heston, right? Moses, God calling out of the fiery bush. God tells him to go. He goes. And so that's what we have there. Let me give you the blanks to letter B there. Pharaoh refuses, and a series of 10 plagues is levied on Egypt to prompt the Pharaoh to let the people go. And finally, Pharaoh consents to let the Hebrew people leave Egypt. Now, there is a reason why the plagues are what they are. There is a corresponding god or a corresponding sacred animal in Egypt for each of the 10 plagues. I'll just name several here. The giver of the Nile, Num, K-N-U-W, right? God afflicted the river, that river of life, the giver of life with blood. He killed everything in it, right? Let's Apis, the bull god, when that plague came upon the land and it killed the Egyptians' livestock, that was an affront to Apis, the god that they worshipped. So each plague was a slap in the face of an Egyptian god. Look at Exodus chapter 12, verse 12, and God gives the reason why he's doing these things. Exodus 12, verse 12. God is showing himself strong, and look at Exodus 12, verse 12. And you can read the context beforehand later, but it says, "For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night." This is the last of the plagues. "And will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord." Okay, so Exodus 12:12, God gives the reasons for these plagues. I am judging the gods of Egypt. Now, letter C. They are on their way out now, and they go out. They spoil the Egyptians. Pharaoh finally tells them to go. He consents that for the Hebrew people to leave after he loses his firstborn. And letter C. On their way out, they are as far as the Red Sea. The Red Sea, when God parts the Red Sea and the Hebrew people cross over to the other side, the water comes together again, protecting them from the Egyptian army and freeing them from the slavery in Egypt. So God, of course, has only one destination for them, the promised land of Canaan, the land that is flowing. So flowing with milk and honey. So they are physically free from slavery at this time. For us, in the New Testament, you could read Galatians 3, verses 20 to 26. That physical freedom from slavery is picturing our spiritual freedom from sin. Okay? In fact, let's go there. Keep your finger in Exodus. Go to Galatians chapter 3 so you can understand the spiritual aspect of what's happening or what will happen in our regard. Galatians chapter 3. And that's why I had us sing some of the songs that we sang this evening, right? Free from the law, oh happy condition, right? So here, the law is good. The law is not bad, but look what it says in Galatians chapter 3, verse 20. Or verse 19. "Wherefore then serveth the law?" Galatians 3:19. "Wherefore then serveth the law? It was added because of transgressions, till the seed should come to whom the promise was made, and it was ordained by angels in the hand of a mediator. Now a mediator is not a mediator of one, but God is one. Is the law then against the promises of God? God forbid. For if there had been a law given which could have given life, verily righteousness should have been by the law. But the Scripture has concluded all under sin, that the promise by faith of Jesus Christ might be given to them that believe. But before faith came, we were kept under the law, shut up unto the faith which should afterwards be revealed. Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster, to bring us into Christ, that we might be justified by faith. But after that faith is come, we are no longer under a schoolmaster. For ye are all the children of God by faith in Christ Jesus." So here we come to the law, number 2 of your outline, back in Exodus here. And we don't have to read much. Turn to Exodus 31 here. But the law, then, is God's commandments at Mount Sinai. Your blanks there. It's God's commandments at Mount Sinai. And how did he do it? I mentioned it this morning. Exodus 31, verse 18. Okay, Exodus 31, verse 18, just so you know. It says, Exodus 31:18, "And he gave unto Moses, when he had made an end of communing with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tables of testimony, tables with stone, written with the finger of God." Okay? The handwriting on the wall. This was the handwriting on the tablets of stone. So letter A there on your outline, the Hebrew people now, it should say not, now begin to take on a national identity. They aren't Israel yet, but they're about to be, right? They're going to take on a national identity as Israel. From the Red Sea, the Israelites travel south and camp at Mount Sinai. And that's where Moses receives the law. 2 things that I want, maybe you can do some extra study on a little bit later. Number 1, you can go to YouTube and just type in Red Sea crossing. And there's a special on how they have coral that are under the Red Sea in the shape of chariot wheels and different axles. And it's amazing. It's fun. It's fun to watch. But there's another video, if you Google Mount Sinai, blackened mountain tips, there's like an Indiana Jones type of a character guy, the independently wealthy. He went into Arabia, where they believe Mount Sinai is, and the top of the mountain is charred black. Why? Because of God's presence with Moses. Okay, remember they weren't supposed to even touch the mountain, or else they would die, right? And so because of the thunderings and the lightnings of the law given at Mount Sinai, it's all charred black. And how does the top of a mountain get so black? There's no volcanic ash or rock there. It's burned from the outside, from something extremely hot. Our God is a consuming fire. And remember how he led the children of Israel? By a pillar of fire, by night, and a cloud by day. So, letter B, they received God's commandments at Mount Sinai. Moses receives the 10 Commandments written on tablets of stone by the finger of God. Moses also receives a full revelation of the law that is to govern Israel's national life. This is how you're going to live. Love your neighbor as yourself. This is how you're going to treat your neighbor, right? And all the laws about cleanliness, all the laws about separation, all the laws about holiness, and all the laws about nutrition, right? All the ceremonial law. He's given all these things to govern Israel's national life as well as her relationship to God. How are they going to approach God? By sacrifice of a perfect animal, right? So let me reread that. Second block point under letter B. Moses also receives full revelation of the law that is to govern Israel's national life as well as her relationship to God. And letter C, God promises to bless her abundantly, Israel, for obedience and curse her soundly for disobedience. So bless her abundantly for obedience and curse her soundly for disobedience. So why is the law given? Okay, the law is given to provide a standard of righteousness to them, a standard of how they were to live, how they're going to relate to God as well as each other. All right, so now so they're getting the law. This is unique. Remember why God chose Abraham to father a people to represent God to the world. This is how they're going to do it. They're going to have God's law, and they're going to live by God's law. They're going to be a nation, a holy nation that was supposed to represent God to the world. And they're going to do it by revelation. What God said, this is how you live, the law. So now they received the law. Let's turn to Numbers chapter 13. Okay, I'll just pray this evening. Typically, I wanted to end early so we can pray as a group, but we started a little late, and this is a lot to cover. But Numbers chapter 13. They are out of Egypt. They've received the law at Mount Sinai, and Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, right? Numbers chapter 13. Let's look at verses 1 to 3. I'll give you the blank there of the third major event, page number 3 of your outline, Kadesh Barnea. It is the place of rebellion. It is the place of rebellion against God. So far we've been given different locations, right? We've been given, if you remember the map that you were given, right? The big body of water, the Mediterranean, the Nile River, and that finger of Red Sea. They're on the east side of the Red Sea, Mount Sinai. They're gonna wander in there. They're gonna move up that Red Sea towards the Dead Sea, and they're gonna be at the southern gateway of Canaan, or the Promised Land. That's Kadesh Barnea. This is the first place of testing. Though they did get tested in the wilderness about food and about meat as well. But let's look at Numbers chapter 13. We'll read verses 1 to 3. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Send thou men, that they may search the land of Canaan, which I give unto thee, the children of Israel. Of every tribe of their fathers shall you send a man, every one a ruler among them. So get representatives from each tribe, leaders from each tribe, young men, men that lead. And then what? Look at verse 16. So these are the names of the men which Moses sent to spy out the land. And Moses called Oshea, the son of Nun, Jehoshua. And Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said unto them, Get you up to this way southward, and go up into the mountain, and see the land what it is, and the people that dwell therein, wherein they be strong or weak, few or many. And what the land is that they dwell in, whether it be good or bad, and what cities they be that they dwell in, whether in tents or in strongholds. And what the land is, whether it be fat or lean, whether there be wood therein or not, and be of good courage, and bring of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the time of the first ripe grapes. So they went up and searched the land from the wilderness of Zin unto Rehob, as men come to Hamath. And they ascended by the south, and came unto Hebron, where Ahiman, Shishai, and Talmai, the children of Anak, were. Now Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. And they came into the brook Eshcol, and cut down from thence a branch with the cluster of grapes, and they bare it between two upon a staff. And they brought of the pomegranates and of the figs. The place was called the brook of Eshcol, because of the cluster of grapes which the children of Israel cut down from thence. And they returned from the searching of the land after 40 days. So they go and they search. Let me give you the letter A there of your outline before we read more here. So Israel leaves Mount Sinai, migrates north to an oasis called Kadesh Barnea, the southern gateway, which is the southern gateway into the promised land. So get that picture of the map in your head. They're right there, kind of from the bottom of the Dead Sea, heading westward to the Mediterranean. They're in the middle there. They're about to enter the promised land, but remember, the promise given to Abraham was 400 years before, or at least more than 400 years before. It has given Satan 400 plus years to fill the land with giants. It has given Satan more than 400 years to stock the land that was promised to Abraham with enemy, unbelieving tribes and peoples. All right? So let's look at verse 26. They're coming back. They're going to give the report. So far, you should be singing this song in your head, right? 12 men went to spy in Canaan, right? And they brought grapes of clusters long, right? So all those songs should be coming up, the words should be coming up in your head. Now, verse 26. And they went and came to Moses and to Aaron and all the congregation of the children of Israel into the wilderness of Paran to Kadesh, and brought back word unto them unto all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told them and said, We came into the land whither thou sentest us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. Look at the size of these grapes and pomegranates, right? I think there's excitement there. Nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there, right? The children of the giant. And the Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and by the coast of Jordan. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, Let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. So here is Caleb. He's great, man. I want him on my team, right? But look at verse 31. But the men that went up with him said, We be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, The land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof. And all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. Whoa. Letter B on your outline. From this vantage point, the 12 spies are sent into the promised land. One spy from each of the 12 tribes. The land is inhabited by the Canaanites. So 12 spies, Canaanites, who would not take kindly to an Israelite horde coming back into the land. So these are the children of Anak. This is the land of the giants and their descendants. Letter C. When the spies return, they have some good news and some bad news. First point there, the good news is that the land is beautiful and bountiful. It's flowing with milk and honey. It's exciting. It is as God promised. Second bullet point there, the bad news is there are giants and hostile armies throughout the land. 10 spies report that the land is unconquerable, in spite of the fact that God has promised to give them victory over any opposing forces, in spite of the fact that God has destroyed the Egyptian army, in spite of the fact that plague after plague after plague, God destroyed their enemies in Egypt, and now they can't think that the same God can deliver them here. But however, there's good news, right? 2 spies, number 3, or the third bullet point under B there, or C. 2 spies, Joshua and Caleb, exhort the people to believe God and to go into the land. The people believed the majority report and refused to follow Moses into the land. Thus, this becomes known as a place of rebellion. So what happens with them, long story short? The 10 guys, they die of plague, the bad report. And some of the other men say, hey, look, we'll try to take it anyway. Let's go in anyway. And Moses says, don't go. They go and they're discomfited, the King James says. So there is God now declaring, you are going to pay for this. Let's look at chapter 14. And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron, and the whole congregation said unto them, would God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God we had died in this wilderness? And wherefore hath the Lord brought us into this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be prey? Were it not better for us to return unto Egypt? And they said one to another, let us make a captain, and let us return unto Egypt. And Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, which were of them that searched the land, rent their clothes. And they spake unto all the company of the children of Israel, saying, the land which we passed through the search, it is an exceeding good land. And if the Lord delight in us, then he will bring us into the land and give it us, a land which floweth milk and honey. Only rebel not. Rebel not ye against the Lord, neither fear ye the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their defense is departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Fear them not. But all the congregation bade stone them with stones. Okay, can you imagine a couple million people wanting to kill you? And the glory of the Lord appeared. God shows up in the tabernacle of the congregation before all the children of Israel. And the Lord said unto Moses, how long will this people provoke me? And how long will it be ere they believe me? For all the signs which I have showed among them, I will smite them with the pestilence and disinherit them, and will make of thee a greater nation and mightier than they. And Moses said unto the Lord, then the Egyptians shall hear it, for thou broughtest up this people in thy might from among them. And they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land, for they have heard that thou, Lord, art among his people, that thou, Lord, art seen face to face, and that thy cloud standeth over them, and thou goest before them by daytime in a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire by night. Now if thou shalt kill all this people as one man, then the nations which have heard the fame of thee will speak, saying, because the Lord was not able to bring this people into the land which he sware unto them, therefore he hath slain them in the wilderness. And now I beseech thee, let thy power of my Lord be great, according as thou hast spoken, saying, the Lord is long-suffering and of great mercy, forgiving iniquity and transgression, and by no means clearing the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and the fourth generation. Pardon, I beseech thee, the iniquity of this people, according unto the greatness of thy mercy, and as thou hast forgiven this people from Egypt even until now. And the Lord said, I have pardoned according to thy word. But as truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord, because of all those men which have seen my glory and my miracles, which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tempted me now, these 10 times, have not hearkened to my voice. Surely they shall not see the land which I swear unto their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoke me see it. But my servant Caleb, because he had another spirit with him, and hath followed me fully, him will I bring into the land whereunto he went, and his seed shall possess it. Now the Amalekites and the Canaanites dwelt in the valley. Tomorrow turn you and get you into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, saying, how long shall I bear with this evil congregation which murmur against me? I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel, which they murmur against me, saying unto them, as truly as I live, saith the Lord, as ye have spoken in my ears, so will I do to you. So here's the 40 years. This is why. Your carcasses shall fall in the wilderness, in all that were numbered of you, according to your whole number from 20 years old and upward, which have murmured against me. Right? So, look, anybody who was 20 years old and up, because of your unbelief and your murmuring against me, in the next 40 years, your dead bodies will be strewn out all through the wilderness until you die. Verse 30, doubtless ye shall not come into the land concerning which I swear to make you dwell therein, save Caleb the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun. But your little ones, which you said should be a prey, them will I bring in, and they shall know the land which ye have despised. But as for you, Your carcasses, they shall fall in this wilderness, and your children shall wander in the wilderness 40 years, and bear your whoredoms until your carcasses be wasted in the wilderness. After the number of days in which you search the land, even 40 days, each day for a year, shall you bear your iniquities, even 40 years, and ye shall know my breach of promise. I, the Lord, have said, I will surely do it unto all this evil congregation that are gathered together against me in this wilderness. They shall be consumed, and there shall they die. And in the next verses, the 10 spies will die of plague, and the people who attempt to go into the land anyway, they get punished by being defeated. So let me give you the blanks here. 40 years of wandering is the consequences of rebelling against God. In community college, in secular community college, I had a professor who was the Indiana Jones type. I mean, he wore the leather vest, the leather hat, had the token whip on his waist. He was a fun guy, great teacher, Western civilization teacher. I think he taught some world religion too. But he would mock and say, he would mock this story. And I didn't know anything about the truth of this story. He would mock the story and say, the men of Israel, they just didn't like asking for directions, did they? Why would they wander for 40 years? They could just ask somebody which way to go. Apparently, he didn't read the ancient document of the book of Numbers here, right? So he wasn't that great of a history teacher. But this is exactly why. The 40 years of wandering wasn't because they didn't know where they were going. The 40 years of wandering was a judgment on unbelief. So let me give you the next blanks there. So as consequences of rebellion against God at Kadesh Barnea, the Exodus generation is condemned to wander in the wilderness until everyone who is 21 years old or older at the time dies. They were condemned to wander in the wilderness. And so, letter B, in the ensuing 40 years, a new generation comes to leadership. It's willing to follow their leaders into the land. Moses leads them to the north, up north, to the north of the Dead Sea near Jericho, the eastern gateway to the promised land. Remember, they would have to cross the Jordan River to get to Jericho, and that's the next lesson. But Moses encourages the people, gives them additional instruction found in the book of Deuteronomy, and then he would die. So that is the Exodus era. Okay, it's a great story, a lot behind it, a lot of history, and a lot of archaeology that supports all of this. But this was an exciting time, but a sobering time. God does punish for unbelief. God does cause you to lose years because of unbelief and disobedience. And so let's learn from that. Next week, we'll divide up into groups to pray. I would like us next week, if you could prepare your heart and mindset to be prepared to pray in different locations on the church campus here. Those women who work in the nursery, I'm going to ask you to pray in there. The youth and youth workers, I'm going to ask you to pray in the educational building. The adults here that aren't working with children or with the nursery, we're going to pray in here. Three things, okay? A greater commitment, greater connectedness for people who come here but aren't fully committed. And then we're going to pray for the use of these buildings. Perhaps we'll lay hands on, if you're able to walk around, we'll lay hands on the nursery, the welcome center, asking God to bless the use of it. And then the family center as well, with different activities going on in there, VBS, even the rummage sale. We get visitors from the rummage sale that ask about us and then eventually visit the church for some time. So that's next week. We'll spend a little bit more time in prayer. Since we went a little long this evening, I'll just pray, but just keep in mind what's going on. And those of you watching live stream, please pray to that end for greater connectedness, greater commitment, and then an increase in numbers in regards to let's reach people. And we can pray that. So I'm going to say some other things to the church family. So let me just say goodbye to those watching on the live stream. God bless you. If you want the outline and didn't get it, we can email it to you. Just email the church. All right? All right, anybody?